Good morning. Gianna Beeson with Vision Beyond Borders.
Patrick Klein, Vision Beyond Borders.
Okay, so we're talking today about China.
Right. I went to China for 31 years. You've been to China.
Yes, but it's been 30 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm sure lots has changed.
A lot has changed, and my last time there was probably about 8 years ago. So
And
things
you've
have
been
changed
kicked out of China,
twice.
but you are no longer allowed into China, right?
I don't know if I have to wait 10 years before I can apply for a new visa to try to go in, but they have facial recognition software, they have fingerprint scanners, it's a total police state and what it is. And there's 350 million cameras. People are being watched all the time. And just recently I was talking to a man that lives in Hong Kong that goes into China quite a bit. And he's been going there for over 50 years. And I'm really concerned by the things that he was sharing. First of all, I did not know it, but China's gone to a cashless society. There's an app on your phone, and you pay everything with an app.
So my brother flies in there. He's a pilot. And I was talking to him a few days ago, and since you had told me this story when you got back from your vacation or from your work, I asked him about it, and it's called Alipay.
Mm-hmm.
That what he has to, and he's obviously a U.S. citizen, so he has to load up this Alipay on his phone because that's how everything gets paid for is through the phone.
Well, this man was saying that even the beggars have a QR code, and you scan and you tell them how much you want to give to the beggars, and you give that money off your phone out of your account. And, he also said you don't need a passport anymore. You have these ID cards to go in. And I'm sure like with your brother, he needed a passport to get in. But for Hong Kong citizens and that, they just have this ID card, which they scan and go across the border. And first of all, I lived in Hong Kong for like 4 years, and I've traveled there for over 30 years. And Hong Kong is now under Chinese rule. In 1997, they went back to China.
Mm-hmm.
There was a 99-year lease with the British, which ended in 1997. But they were guaranteed that they would have 50 years of democracy. So in 2047, they would go back under Chinese rule. Well, President Xi has not honored that.
Right.
And so he's taken over Hong Kong, and we know he has aspirations to take over Taiwan.
Right.
And that they're working all over the world with the Belt and Road Initiative. And he says by 2047, China will be the world's superpower. Not one of them, but the world's superpower. So America will drop down. Every other country will drop down. India will not be strong. Russia will not be strong. That it will be China will be the world's superpower. And, first of all, that really bothers me because China, with a communist government, there's no morals. There's no morals. No. There's no values.
No human value.
People are just expendable.
Mm-hmm.
You're just part of this big machine. You don't have any say. You wouldn't dare ever go against a communist government because you'll disappear. They have no problem shooting people.
And you were telling me that this guy you were talking to said there's no more homeless.
Right. He said, China really has a good system. He said, because we don't have homelessness, we don't have any riots in the streets, we don't have demonstrations in the streets. Well, yes, because when you have a communist society, these people disappear, the homeless people would disappear. The people that dissent with the government disappear.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot dissent to the government. You go to prison or are executed.
Done with.
Years ago, and I don't know if they still practice this, but I know that, like, if you, they would have public executions. And what they would do is they would take these men from the prisons to a soccer stadium, and they would shoot them and then charge the family 20 cents for the bullet that they used to kill your son. I mean, it's just, it is so heartless, and there's no compassion toward people. You're just part of a big, huge machine, and the government is the end of all, everything. and they're the answer for everything. And you just either accept that this is the way it is, or you're done. Your life is over. And to hear this man just talk about how wonderful China is and how they don't have dissent there and everything
Now,
else,
this man is not Chinese.
he's not. And he's an American.
Because when I was, the reason I bring that up, when I was in China 30 plus years ago, our tour guide and people like that were selling us on how great China is compared to America. And they were pointing out the apartment buildings and how they get to live in these apartment buildings. And we're all just looking around like, I mean, obviously it wasn't better for sure, but he didn't know that. This is an American you're talking to,
Right.
or a past American.
Right. And, it's just, it really was disturbing to me because he was talking about how great communism really is. And I'm thinking, first of all, you're not acknowledging, first of all, that they're saying that the government is God, that everything, your total devotion is to the government. It's not to God. And, what about all the organ harvesting, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, that they're taking your organs, not with your permission?
Well, and that's probably what's happening to a lot of the homeless people.
Right. Yeah.
Is they're probably being put in the back of vans for their organs.
Good point. And I heard it used to be that when you went to prison, like a good, healthy man, maybe to be 20 and 30 years old, he was jaywalking. He got picked up and put in prison for jaywalking. Okay. Because they wanted his organs.
What's with this whole jaywalking thing? Why is that always used as the example?
I don't know.
Is that because it's such a harmless crime, or?
Well, it's just, it's kind of funny because they have a guy in China that they said was the model citizen. He was an amazing man. He had such respect for the elderly. He always did acts of kindness and everything else. And they're supposed to all look up to this man and kind of emulate him and try to be like him.
And did he never jaywalk? Was that part of it?
I don't know. But he never existed. He was just a fictional character. But they make it sound like he was this model citizen and everything else. And he was just an amazing guy. He was not a Christian, but he was a Communist Party member, very loyal to the Communist Party. But he has such a respect for the elderly and help people out and everything else. So that's who their role model is supposed to be.
Okay.
But, in China, so let's say this guy gets picked up for jaywalking. So they would put him in prison. And then let's say they needed the organs. Now, in the United States, if you got on a list for an organ transplant, you're talking years.
Yeah.
Years before you can get an organ. Well, you can now get an organ in China in 2 weeks.
On demand, practically.
Yes. And so what would happen is...
So they get an order and they just go find someone.
In the prison that's in good, healthy shape. And so they used to be that they would shoot that guy, and there was vans outside the prison while the body was still warm. They were taking the organs and selling them on the black market. So you could go to China, let's say, and have a heart transplant in 2 weeks. You didn't have to wait 10 years to get a heart or get a new set of lungs or whatever. But now I'm hearing that they don't even kill the person. They actually put the person to sleep. And while they're still alive, they're taking their organs, because the organs last longer because they're still alive. And it's like, this is murder. This is outright murder. And then we have what's happening in Burma with the Chinese supporting the Burmese military that are slaughtering their tribal people and the people in the country of Burma. And you have all these things that China is behind. And we know that China is trying to destroy America through fentanyl and stealing our technology and doing everything. And it's like, okay, if China were to be honest and trying to become a world superpower through honest means, that'd be one thing. But when you're underhanded and you're selling the organs of your people, stealing their organs while they're still alive, the weaker people up in Northwest China, they're putting these people in re-education camps, trying to get them to renounce Islam and embrace communism. And they said because these weaker people, they don't drink alcohol and they don't eat pork, the Muslims
Oh, they want their
want
organs
want good
because
organs,
there's
so
more.
they're killing these weaker people, these minority peoples. And it's like there's nothing you can do in the country because if you stand up to the government, you're gone. You disappear.
Oh, yeah.
I remember even when I lived in Northwest China, there was a guy, a friend of mine, and he was Uyghur, and his dad was a translator for the governor in the province. And his dad was voicing to the governor one day some of his own ideas that were against communism. He said, "My dad disappeared for 10 years." He said they had a trial. The family was not invited to the trial. He said they had this trial, and my father went to prison for 10 years. He came home 10 years later, a broken man.
Wow.
He said, my father just chain smoked and would just stare at the wall.
Who knows what happened to him?
I'm sure they beat him,
Oh,
and
yeah.
who knows what kind of tortures they put him through and everything else. And, in America, we say we're innocent till proven guilty. Well, there you're guilty until you can prove that you're innocent. But how do you prove you're innocent when you're in a prison cell?
Right.
You know,
And I'm
and
sure their trials are not,
they're not fair.
no,
And
and
once
proper
again,
representation.
you can't stand against this huge central government that controls all. And even in 2008, they had the Olympics in Beijing. Well, first of all, the air was so polluted in Beijing that they stopped all the factories and everything else 6 weeks before the Olympics. Well, there were a lot of athletes that said, "I'm not going to Beijing because it's too dangerous." I mean, they would
I
get
remember
poison in their
back when I
lungs.
was there, it was so bad.
Yeah. And then they told people they couldn't drive and everything else, and they sent people home from work 6 weeks with no pay. And then what they did is they went in and they built the Olympic Village, and they tore down 1,000 people's
Oh
houses
my goodness.
to build the Olympic Village. So let's say your mom and dad are living in
Where
the
they want the
house.
Olympic Village at.
And so what they did is they tore down your mom and dad's house, put your mom and dad on the streets as homeless people, and there was nothing you could do about it. They did not compensate you. Okay? There was one woman, she was, I believe, 79 years old. They said you can apply for a permit to demonstrate during the Olympics. Okay? She applied for the permit. She never got the permit. But because she applied for the permit, she got 1 year hard labor. A 79-year-old lady.
Wow.
I remember there was a lady in central China, her son disappeared. And so she went to the police and filled out a missing persons report. Well, her village, they found out that many teenage young people had disappeared. And the police said, we don't know what happened. And a couple months later, she was watching the nightly news, and they had a live broadcast from a coal mine. And she saw her son carrying heavy buckets of coal walking behind the commentator. So she went to the coal mine, found out that her son had been kidnapped by the police and sold as slave labor in this
The
coal mine. So she had to raise the money, find the money to buy her son's freedom back. And so here were all these young people had disappeared from her village. They were kidnapped by the police and sold as slave labor.
Wow.
And there's nothing you can do. You can't contest it. And so, it really breaks my heart when people are talking about in America, communism would be good for America. And they promise all these things. And, Chairman Mao promised a lot of good things in China as well.
Well, but let's go back to the very beginning of what we started the conversation, because it's all technology based. So the whole world is being prepared for this technology.
And it's scary because if you can't buy or sell without your phone, what if that app goes down? Or what if there's a virus?
What if you do something? So to the point you're making, I've heard recently that if you get caught jaywalking, once again they're talking about jaywalking, not only you'll immediately get the fine will get taken out of your money through this app thing that they're using. and your social credit score goes down. So if you get enough hits like that, you are done
You know,
transacting in the marketplace.
you can't get bank loans. You can't travel by airlines. They're trying to cut it down where you can't travel by trains. If you get down to a certain credit score, which they're saying a lot of Christians are put at that level.
But they're doing that. The whole world's getting set up for that.
I know, and it's very alarming to me what's going on. And then to have a man that's an American say, communism really is a good system. And he said, the house churches can only be 30 members most. Okay. It used to be there were house churches in China with tens of thousands of people.
Right.
And to think that those all been closed down and the churches are down to 30 people. Now, he said you can go to the government church and you can buy Bibles. Like you could go and you could buy 1 or 2 or 3 maybe. But if you want to buy 50 or 100, they won't do it. You'd have to be a pastor that was from a government-sanctioned church and
are
show your
these
ID.
Bibles aligned with communism, or
No,
are they
he
true
said there's
Bibles?
not that communist version. I'd heard before that there was a communist version, but he's saying there's not because people would not buy it.
And this is coming from the guy who thinks communism is good?
Yeah. And it really bothered me, and I don't know if he's been threatened that he has to go along with the party line, because if you say anything against President Xi or against communism, it's 12 years in prison. I mean, do you want to live like that? I don't.
No.
And these people are saying, we don't want any kings and all this stuff, but the same people would say, communism's good.
Or
we
social.
should go.
Well,
They'll say socialism, but
Yeah.
it's one step
That's
away
just
from
one
communism. And it's, socialism really does not work and communism does not work. I mean, why are all these people trying to come to the United States from communist countries? And, people are fleeing from these countries that are being taken over by communists.
How many people that are touting this do you think have actually stepped foot into a communist country? None of them.
Probably
They
none.
would not be,
Probably none.
except for the leaders that...
I heard years ago that 143 million people died as a result. And this was probably 20, 30 years ago, that they said 143 million people had died because of communism, as a direct result of communism. I mean, this is not a life-giving, this is talking about killing people. Even Chairman Mao, during his 40-year reign, 20-year reign, he killed 40 million people. And you couldn't say anything against Chairman Mao years ago. Now they can criticize him, but they couldn't say anything against Chairman Mao. But 40 million people disappear
In the 40-year time frame?
in 20 years.
In 20 years, I mean?
And if you spoke a foreign language, if you were educated, if you wore glasses, you were considered an enemy of the state.
Why?
And people, because
because they
they
didn't
want
want
to
anyone to get ahead in any way.
they want to keep you dumbed down. They don't want you to be educated. They don't want you to know what's going on. They don't want you to think for yourself. And even if you look at communist countries, the majority of the food you're eating is carbs. It's not protein.
Well, I mean, that's the same in Cuba, when we go...
Right. But it's like, because when you eat protein, it helps develop your brain and everything else. You need a balance.
You need the fats and the...
And the amount of protein that the Chinese consume is very small compared to how much carbs they're eating. And I think a lot of it is to make people lethargic, that they don't want to revolt against the government. And there's that ingrown fear of, remember what happened in Tiananmen Square, where they killed thousands of students, So I think the older generation's like, oh, don't try to buck the system. Just go along with it. And it really concerns me because, when you have all your cash and everything else, your finances are all controlled through an app on your phone. Your travel and everything else is through an ID card. What if all of a sudden they decide, okay, you can't travel anymore. You can't get on subways.
Well, you're not going to.
Right.
Because it's not going to...
Right. And we know the Bible tells us we're going to go to a cashless society. You'll have to have a mark on the back of your hand or on your forehead, which not everybody has a right hand. But I remember even years ago in Hong Kong, they had what they called an octopus card, and it was about the size of a credit card. It was flat on both sides and it had an infinity symbol on it. And you could put it in a machine and you could transfer cash from your checking or money from your checking or your savings directly to that card. And then you would use that card to get on the subways or on the buses. You can use it now at Starbucks. You can use it at the grocery store. You can use it at the pharmacy. Everywhere you can use that card. Well, it was so strong, a man could put it in his wallet, and it would read it through your
Oh, okay.
wallet. It
So
could
the
read
fraud capability on it would be.
it could read it right through your
Mhm.
purse.
Mhm.
And I saw a man swipe his wrist across. I said, "What did you just do?" He said, "There's a chip in my watch." I thought that is so close to having the mark in the back of your hand, a chip in the back of your
Well, and
hand.
with all the fraud, they're going to have to go there
Right, right,
because the more technology capable things get, the more fraud happens,
right,
and so that's how they're going to sell the population on it.
right. And they're also going to control everything about you. I mean, if they shut down that card or that chip on you,
Hmm.
you can't buy or you can't sell.
Well, and that's what the Bible says.
Right. And you can't travel. I mean, it is so close to what's happening in China. And to me, it's scary because it's like, and I mean, I know the Lord and I'm thankful and I don't need to live in fear. But to hear an American say, wow, this is so convenient and they're so much farther ahead than American technology and everything else. And I'm like, think about the downside of this, what the Chinese government's doing to people around the world and how you've lost any ability to speak out. You can't say anything. And, even during COVID, they said even in Hong Kong, if people were not wearing masks in their house, they were fined $1,200.
And how would they know? 'Cause
Cameras.
cameras inside the houses,
Well, cameras that
on the
can see
phones, and
inside and yeah, and on your phones and everything
Mhm.
else. And
or people turning you in.
right. And that's what the whole thing is to pit people against them, husbands and wives against them, children against their
Well,
parents,
and back
parents
to the
against their
social
children.
credit system, they
Mhm.
were saying that they put the people on a screen that this person's social credit is like whatever negative, and then people will know to just stay away from them
Mhm.
because they want.
That's kind of like the communist old days when they would denounce people. They
Hmm.
wear a dunce hat and then denounce them, and they would end up killing themselves because nobody would want anything to do with them. I mean, it's the control is just unbelievable. And we think, oh, this is convenient and everything else. I I think in the wrong hands, and we see it in China, it is in the wrong hands,
Hmm.
and they control everything. They control all your movements. They know where you're at all times. There's actually a video on YouTube. The BBC told a man from London, "Go get lost in China, and we'll see how long it takes to find you with the cameras."
Oh, I remember this.
And they found him in 4.5 minutes.
Oh my goodness, there's just no getting around it. But you know what?
It's
That's going to be
creepy.
how it is in the end. There, we talked about this the other day about prepping and all this, which is great. You should prepare. But when these end times come, like we're talking about,
Mhm.
there's only going to be one place to hide, and that's going to be in the shadow of the Almighty.
Amen.
And
Amen.
there is no other place to hide.
Amen.
And only He will be able to hide us from.
And I encourage people to get in the Bible, to be in the Bible on a daily basis, renewing our minds, getting the grounding of the Word of God, the truth,
So you stay
because
strong.
because the lies are out there, and it says even the elect will be deceived. And so we have to know what the Word of God says. We need to put our faith and trust completely in Jesus Christ, because communism, the whole thing is to get your eyes off of Jesus to look to the Communist Party, which is godless.
Hmm.
And they want you to look to the government to meet all of your needs and everything else.
Well, and that's
I
what our young people are voting for.
I know, but as I get older, the more I want to be detached from my government.
Right.
My government was set up by God to serve people, not to control people.
Well, look at this government shutdown and how many people
Mm,
aren't eating because of it because they've
mm,
been dependent on the government.
right.
And
And it's not good. The less dependent on the government we are, the better off we are.
yes,
And I remember even during COVID going to Home Depot and they said to not use cash. They didn't want you using cash, and they said there's a nationwide coin shortage and everything else.
well, they're trying to stir that back up again.
I thought, I'm going to go take my coins to the bank and cash them in because they may not be able to cash them in then. And I took them to the bank and I had to, I called ahead and they said, well, we're open till 5. And I went there and they said, well, we actually close at 3. You have to have an appointment. But they let me come in and bring my cash and I said, my coins. And I said, well, I heard there's a nationwide corn shortage. And she said, no, there's not.
No, I worked in banking for years.
And what a lie. But to strike fear in people and
But
everything
you know
else.
what? They're starting it up again. I was in line I'm not working in the bank anymore because I work at Vision Beyond Borders, but that was my career.
Mhm.
And I worked all through COVID at the bank. Um, but I was in line at the store the other day and she couldn't give exact change because she had no pennies. And she said, it's impossible to get pennies at the bank right now. Now, I don't know if that's true because I haven't tried to get any pennies recently.
I just saw today that today was the last day they were minting pennies
Okay.
in Pennsylvania.
So, yeah, if
It's just weird because, we think that convenience is a great thing, but the more it becomes convenient, the more we give up our rights and our freedoms. And, we have to really rethink
And
these
fear.
things. Yes. But
the more they can sell fear to us, we give up those rights as well.
But I was just thinking about this man and I'm thinking, here he is espousing how great communism is. It's better than the American system because they don't have the rioting, they don't have the homelessness, they don't have all the dissent and everything else. And I thought, you're overlooking what this wicked, evil government is doing. Even during COVID, during the shutdowns, people were locked in their apartment buildings. They welded the doors shut so people could not go out to get food. There's videos on YouTube of people in Shanghai in their high-rise buildings crying out, let us out, let us out. And I heard stories of these people would even jump to their deaths because they were starving to death. And they found people after they opened the doors back up and people had died in their apartments from starvation. You have a government that is so godless, has no compassion toward
None.
anybody. Everybody's expendable. And even Deng Xiaoping said after Tiananmen massacre, he said, we have over 1 billion people. So what if 1 million people die? It's like a drop in the bucket.
Wow.
So human life means
So
nothing
they're
to them.
numbers. They're just numbers. They're
They
not
are.
individuals.
They are. And I'm just like, Lord, wake us up because this is serious stuff. Once you go to communism, it's very hard to get back. Hard to ever get back to democracy. And so, yes, America
And then
doesn't.
even if you go back to democracy, then you have to wait a generation to get the communism
Right.
out of the people.
Yes, yes. But, people need to think about this. This ideology has been responsible for how many hundreds of millions of people's deaths and continues to kill and to exploit people. And there's no respect for human life. I won't go into it, but years ago I heard that they were actually aborting babies in Shenzhen, and you could buy 10 aborted babies for $38 and they were eating them. So when you take the Bible out of society, you take the human element out of society, it's like they say in Joshua, every man does what's right in his own eyes. And he says, choose this day who you're going to serve. And I believe it's time for the church in America and around the world to rise up, to stand up for Jesus and just say, we will not bow. We will not bow to your idols. We will not bow to communism. We
It's
will
like
not
Shadrach,
bow.
Meshach, and Abednego in that fire.
Right.
Isn't it?
We will not bow to Islam. We will not bow down the spirit of the age. But that's why we need to be in the Bible on a daily basis,
Amen.
renewing our minds and strengthening our commitment to Jesus Christ on a daily basis. And really, I encourage people to love Jesus with all your heart and stay in the Word, stay in prayer, and stay in fellowship with other believers. Stay in fellowship with people that are of like mind and like faith, because it's the days are evil that we live in. But I believe the Lord is not done yet. He is not done yet. He's saving people everywhere. We're seeing an opposition with people that are really turning against God, but we're also seeing a turning to God. And I believe the turning to God is going to be much greater than the turning against God. So I'm excited about what God is doing, but thank you for this opportunity to share.
Yeah. Thank you.